I'm Mike. I was 38 when this happened. This was about a year ago, not long after I'd had abdominal surgery that left me stuck at home for a few weeks. I live alone in a quiet neighborhood in Indianapolis. Nothing fancy, just a one-story house with a small porch and an overgrown yard I kept promising myself I'd clean up. At the time, I was still groggy from the painkillers and spending most of my days watching old movies or dozing off on the couch with a heating pad pressed to my stomach. My routine was slow and predictable, which made what happened that day feel even more unreal. It was one of those chilly, gray Tuesdays where everything outside feels still and quiet, like the world's holding its breath. Around noon, I heard a knock at the door. Not the doorbell, an actual knock. Firm, like someone wanted to be heard but not necessarily seen. I wasn't expecting anything, but I did order some compression socks online the week before, so I figured maybe that was it. When I peeked through the peephole, I saw a guy holding a small brown box under one arm and a clipboard in his other hand. He had on a navy blue hoodie, no logo, and a pair of khakis. No delivery truck in sight, but maybe he parked down the street or something. Honestly, I didn't even think to question it. Just shuffled over in my slippers, unlatched the door, and cracked it open. The guy looked up from the clipboard and said, "Got a small package for a Michael Weaver?" His voice was neutral, almost bored, like he'd said that line 1,000 times that morning. I nodded and reached out to grab the pen sticking out of the top of the clipboard, and that's when it happened. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw movement. Fast. Before I could even react, 2 men in black ski masks appeared behind him, like they'd materialized out of thin air. One of them shoved me so hard I lost my balance and crashed into the side table by the door, knocking over a lamp. The other one barreled through, kicking the door open all the way. They were inside in less than 3 seconds. One of them pinned me down with his knee against my back, while the other dragged a length of cord from his jacket pocket and started tying my wrists together. I tried to scream, but the first guy pressed something hard and cold against the back of my neck. I don't know if it was a gun, but in that moment, I didn't care. I went still. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. The fake delivery guy was already inside too, shutting the door behind them and pulling the curtains closed, like he'd done it 100 times. There was this awful silence, broken only by the sound of duct tape tearing as they wrapped it around my ankles and my mouth. I was lying face down on my living room rug, trying not to panic, but every part of me was screaming. The rug smelled like dust and dog hair, and everything felt so vivid, like my senses had turned all the way up. One of them, the one who tied me up, kept calling the shots. He was shorter than the others, maybe mid-30s, with a sharp nasal voice and this weird habit of clicking his tongue before he spoke, like a metronome. He told the others to take my phone and check every room, and they moved fast. Not frantic, though, deliberate, like they'd rehearsed it. I could hear drawers being pulled open, closets ransacked, doors creaking as they went through the guest bedroom, the kitchen, even the laundry area. At one point, one of them, taller guy, kind of bulky, wearing gloves with the fingers cut off, found my wallet in a drawer by the TV and started laughing like he'd just won a scratch-off. "He ain't got shot," he said. I wanted to scream at them that I was recovering from surgery, that I lived alone, that there wasn't anything to take, but I couldn't say a word. The duct tape was tight across my mouth, and I was too scared to try anything. They didn't seem like the kind of people who'd hesitate to hurt someone. Every time they passed by me, I braced myself, wondering if that was it, if they'd suddenly decide I wasn't useful anymore. The fake delivery guy barely said anything. He stayed by the front window, peeking through the blinds every few minutes, clearly watching for someone, neighbors maybe. He never looked at me directly, but at one point, he walked over and knelt beside me. He had these sharp blue eyes and this faint scar that ran from his cheekbone to his ear, like someone had once tried to slice his face open. He stared at me for a second, then whispered, "Don't try anything. "We'll be gone soon." That was it. No threats, no yelling, just cold and calm, like he was asking someone to pass the salt. That scared me more than if he'd screamed. Time got weird after that. I don't know how long they were in the house. Felt like hours, but maybe it was less. I remember the sound of things hitting the floor, glass breaking, more tape being torn. They even opened the attic, though I don't know what they thought they'd find up there. Christmas decorations and some old boxes maybe. At one point, they turned on the kitchen faucet and just let the water run. I could hear it trickling down the drain, pointless and eerie. Every so often, I'd hear one of them curse or mutter something under their breath. But most of the time, it was quiet. Way too quiet. Eventually, just as suddenly as they came, they started to leave. I couldn't see the front door from where I was, but I heard the shorter guy say, "Time's up, grab what you can." I heard footsteps, the creak of the door, and then nothing. No slamming, no yelling, just silence. I stayed there completely still for what felt like another hour, afraid they were still inside, hiding in some corner, waiting to see what I'd do. The air in the room felt heavy, like it had soaked up all the fear and tension and was holding on to it. My body was stiff, my face pressed into the carpet, and my hands were numb from how tightly they'd tied me. Eventually, I managed to wriggle my arms enough to loosen the tape a little. It took forever, but I got one wrist free, then the other. My legs were trickier, but I tore the tape off with shaking hands. When I finally peeled the strip off my mouth, it took some skin with it. I remember crawling to the kitchen, grabbing a knife with trembling fingers, and sitting there on the floor, not knowing what to do next. My phone was gone, my backup was in my bedroom, and I didn't even want to go in there. I felt violated, like the entire house had been poisoned by their presence. I called the police using my laptop through Wi-Fi, using a web app I'd barely remembered I had. They arrived in less than 10 minutes, and the moment they walked in, I just broke down. I'd held it together the whole time, but seeing someone in uniform, someone safe, just flipped a switch in me. I told them everything I could. The scar on the fake delivery guy, the clicking sound the leader made, the gloves with the fingers cut off. Turns out I wasn't the first. They said there had been a string of similar home invasions over the past few months. People living alone, recovering from surgeries or illnesses, usually approached with some kind of delivery pretense. I never saw them again. I gave my statement, the cops dusted for prints, but they said the guys were pros, probably wiped everything down. I moved a few months later. Even now, every time someone knocks on my door, I freeze. I don't answer unless I know exactly who it is. I installed cameras, changed the locks, got a dog. But that fear, it doesn't go away. I keep thinking about how perfectly they chose me, how quiet the street was, how fast it all happened. Sometimes I wonder if they were watching me long before that knock ever came. I survived, yeah, but I've never felt safe in my own home since. I'm not really sure why I'm posting this. Maybe just to get it off my chest, or maybe because I can't stop thinking about how close something really bad might have come to happening. For context, I'm 27, work in graphic design, and have been living alone in a ground-floor apartment in Portland since the start of last year. It's not a bad area. Quiet, lots of trees, a bit out of the way, but that's kind of why I chose it. Most of my days are the same. I wake up, make coffee, and settle into my desk by the window. Nothing exciting, which is exactly how I like it. This happened about 3 weeks ago on a Thursday. I remember because it had been raining nonstop all morning, and I had this headache that wouldn't go away. Around noon, I took a short break to lie down and left my phone on silent. When I finally checked it later, there was a voicemail waiting from an unknown number. The message was from a man who said he was from Express Courier Services, or something similar. His voice was polite but rushed. He said he had tried to deliver a package earlier that morning, didn't get an answer, and would try again later in the afternoon. At first I didn't think much of it, just figured they had the wrong address. But then I listened to the voicemail again, and something about it bugged me. I hadn't ordered anything. No online shopping, no birthdays coming up, no expected deliveries at all. I even double-checked my email just to be sure. Still, I figured mistakes happen all the time with packages. Maybe one of my neighbors ordered something and gave the wrong unit number. I decided to keep an eye out, but didn't feel the need to stress. Around 4:30 p.m., I was still at my desk when someone knocked on my door. Not a buzz from the building entrance, just a knock. 3 short, deliberate taps. I looked through the peephole and saw a guy standing there in a navy blue vest with orange stripes, like the kind couriers wear. But there was no logo and no badge or lanyard. He was holding a clipboard and a plastic envelope. From what I could see, he looked to be in his late 30s or early 40s, with thinning brown hair and pale skin. His expression was off, kind of forced, like he was trying to smile but couldn't quite manage it. I cracked the door just a little, leaving the chain on. Before I could say anything, he jumped right into his spiel. Said I had missed a scheduled pickup that morning and needed to sign some paperwork to avoid a return fee. That phrase stuck with me. Return fee. I'd never heard of a courier charging that just for missing a drop-off. I asked what company he was with, and he pointed vaguely at his vest and said, "We're the contracted delivery service in this area." Still no name, no logo. Just that same weird half smile, like he was trying to look friendly but didn't know how. I told him I hadn't ordered anything and asked who the package was from. He shuffled the papers on his clipboard and said something like, "It might be from a fulfillment center. I don't have the sender listed here." That didn't make any sense. Every legit delivery I've ever received always had tracking info and sender details. I kept the chain on the door and told him I wasn't comfortable signing anything without knowing more. That's when his tone changed. Subtle at first, but his smile dropped, and his eyes started scanning, like he was trying to look past me into the apartment. He leaned in a little and said, "It'll just take a second, ma'am. You don't want this going back. It'll be a bigger hassle for you later." His voice had dropped too, lower and more insistent. Something in me clicked. I didn't feel safe. I've had delivery people come to my door before, and this guy was different. Too pushy, too vague. I told him again that I wasn't expecting anything, and that he could leave whatever it was with the leasing office. That's when he tried to push the door a little, like testing how far it would go with the chain on. My heart jumped into my throat. I reacted without thinking. I slammed the door shut and locked the deadbolt. From the other side, I heard him sigh, and then he knocked again. Just once. Not loud, but long. Then silence. I waited by the door, barely breathing. After what felt like a full minute, I peeked out through the peephole again. He was still there, but now he wasn't facing the door. He was looking toward the window next to my desk, the one I always keep cracked open a little for air. His head tilted slightly like he was trying to listen. My whole body went cold. I backed away from the door slowly, trying not to make a sound. My mind was racing. I kept thinking, did I lock the window? It was one of those older sliding types that never really felt secure, and for a second I was sure I hadn't pushed the latch all the way. I grabbed my phone, ducked below the window line and crawled toward it like I was in some kind of spy movie. When I reached it, I saw the lock was halfway engaged, not fully clicked in. I pushed it shut and slid the latch until I heard that soft, final click. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely feel my fingers. From behind the curtain I heard something. Footsteps, crunching over the gravel path that ran along the side of the building. He was moving. Slowly, not walking away, circling. I crouched behind my couch, still on the floor, clutching my phone, trying to decide if I should call 911. But what would I say? There's a guy outside who might not be a delivery driver. It didn't feel like enough, even though my gut was screaming that something was very, very wrong. I opened my phone camera and turned it to the window, but I was too scared to lift it up. I didn't want him to see me looking. Then I heard the back gate creak open. That gate only leads to the tiny yard behind my apartment. It's locked from the outside, but the wood is rotted enough that someone could easily reach over and unlatch it. I froze. My back door was glass, a sliding one, and I had left the curtain halfway open. I crawled again, this time to the kitchen, where I had a better angle. Sure enough, I could see the top of someone's head moving slowly along the fence. He was back there. I grabbed the nearest thing I could find, a cast-iron skillet, and stood there like an idiot, holding it with both hands, heart pounding so loud I could barely think. Then, thank God, my neighbor's dog started barking. Loud, non-stop. The guy froze. I saw him duck slightly, then back away from the fence and vanish from view. A few seconds later, I heard hurried footsteps running down the gravel path and fading away. I waited another 5 minutes before I even dared move. When I finally looked through the blinds again, he was gone. No sign of him. No truck. No vest. Just an empty yard and a creeping dread I couldn't shake. That night, I barely slept. I kept every light on, a kitchen knife on the nightstand, and my phone fully charged by my side. Around 7 a.m., I called the non-emergency police line and reported what happened. The woman on the phone was polite but didn't sound particularly alarmed. She said they'd send someone to check the area and asked if I had any footage. Of course I didn't. No doorbell cam, and I'd been too afraid to film. She said I should call again if he returned and maybe talk to my leasing office about more security. That was it. Just like that. I hung up feeling like I'd overreacted, but at the same time, I knew I hadn't. Later that day, I went to the leasing office myself. I asked if any deliveries had been scheduled or if they had record of a courier service coming by. The manager, a guy named Carlos, looked confused. He said no packages had been logged for me and no one else had mentioned a missed delivery. I described the man, and Carlos shook his head slowly. "Doesn't sound like any of the regulars," he said. "They all wear ID tags and use the call box." He looked genuinely concerned. He even walked me back to my unit and checked the back gate with me. The latch had been bent slightly, as if someone had tried forcing it open. I bought a camera the next day. One of those motion sensor kinds that alerts your phone when someone's near your door. I haven't had any issues since, but I jump every time it buzzes. I also added a second lock to the back sliding door and keep a heavy flashlight by the window. I hate that I feel paranoid now, like I lost something. Before this, I used to feel safe here. It was my space, my quiet. Now, even when it's calm outside, I find myself staring out the blinds, watching for that vest, that clipboard, that forced smile. I still don't know what he really wanted, or how far he would have gone if I'd opened the door just a little wider. To this day, I still don't know how he got my number. That's what haunts me the most. My name's not listed anywhere public, and I didn't have any packages on the way. The voicemail was real. He used my name. He knew my apartment number. And yet, nothing ever showed up. No follow-up. No explanation. Just that one day, that one knock, and that awful feeling that if I hadn't trusted my gut, I might not be here writing this. I keep wondering how many other people get voicemails like that. How many open the door? How many don't get the chance to post about it afterward? I'm not really one to post stuff online like this, but after what happened last week, I haven't been able to sleep properly, and I figured maybe writing it down might help me process it a little. I'm 40, recently divorced, no kids. I live alone in a quiet suburb outside of St. Louis, Missouri. Nothing ever really happens around here, which is probably why this whole thing shook me so hard. I've been trying to sell my house, downsizing, and I'd finally listed it online about 10 days ago. Took all the standard pictures: living room, kitchen, backyard, even the front porch with the little red chair I always forget to bring in when it rains. It was just a typical Zillow post, nothing weird. Or at least, that's what I thought. About 4 days after the listing went live, I got a knock at the door around 2:15 in the afternoon. I was working from home, just me and my laptop at the kitchen table, when I heard it. Not a loud knock, just kind of a soft, quick double tap. I opened the door, and there was this guy in a dark green polo shirt with a logo I didn't recognize, holding one of those clear plastic florist boxes. He had a delivery tablet in his hand and a Bluetooth earpiece tucked under a baseball cap. Late 30s, maybe early 40s. Tall, with sun-damaged skin and a patchy beard. He gave me this awkward smile and said, "Sorry, looks like this was ordered by mistake. Name doesn't match the system," but I was already on the way. I didn't know what to say. I hadn't ordered flowers, but he seemed calm and professional, so I just thanked him and took the box. I figured someone maybe put the wrong address. Honest mistake, right? The flower arrangement wasn't anything fancy. A mix of red and yellow tulips, slightly wilted with no note. It did strike me as odd that the stems looked freshly trimmed, but the water in the vase smelled off, kind of metallic. I tossed it on the dining room table and forgot about it, assuming the sender would realize their mistake and come back for it, or just let it go. That evening, I went about my routine. Dinner, some TV, and checked the house listing again to see how many views it had. I remember pausing for a second when I noticed a new message in my inbox asking about the basement access. Thing is, I never included a photo of the basement. Not because I was hiding anything, I just hadn't gotten around to cleaning it, and the doors usually closed. The question felt weirdly specific. I replied with a vague answer and brushed it off. That night, around 1:45 a.m., I was woken up by a faint click-click sound. At first I thought it was the heater kicking on, but then I heard what sounded like gravel shifting. I got up, rubbed my eyes, and pulled up the live feed from my Ring camera, which points out to the driveway. And there he was. The same guy from earlier. The delivery driver. Except now he was wearing a dark hoodie and standing next to a beat-up white van parked just outside the view of my motion sensor lights. He wasn't at my door this time. He was walking slowly along the side of my house, dragging his hand across the siding like he was counting windows or measuring something. My stomach dropped. I've never had that kind of adrenaline rush before, where you go cold and hot at the same time. I didn't want to make any sudden moves, so I just stood there in the dark of my bedroom watching the screen, barely breathing. He paced for a minute or two, then disappeared from the frame. I switched to the backyard cam, nothing there. Then I heard the soft creak of the gate. Mine always makes that sound when someone opens it slowly, trying not to be heard. That's when I called 911. I whispered, trying not to panic, telling them someone was on my property. The dispatcher told me to stay on the line and wait somewhere safe. I grabbed my phone, a flashlight, and the small bat I keep next to the bed. Not for this kind of thing, but for raccoons that occasionally mess with the trash. By the time the police showed up, less than 10 minutes later, the guy and the van were gone. They checked around, didn't find any signs of forced entry, and told me to call again if anything else happened. One of the officers asked if I knew the man. I told him about the flower delivery earlier, and that's when things got weird. The cop paused and asked if I'd kept the flowers. I showed him the box still sitting on the dining room table. He didn't touch it, just kind of looked at it for a long time and asked if I had taken any photos. I hadn't, but I offered to send him the Ring footage. Before they left, one of them quietly advised me to leave my lights on that night and lock every window, even the high ones. That advice stuck with me. The next morning, I got a call from the officer I spoke with. Detective Marks, I think his name was. He told me they'd run the plates on the van. It was registered to a small moving company in another state, but the address was bogus. Apparently, there had been similar reports in nearby neighborhoods over the last 2 months, people receiving strange deliveries shortly after listing their homes for sale. In 2 of those cases, there had been attempted break-ins days later, and one of them had escalated into something a lot worse. Home invasion, armed robbery. The flowers, they said, were likely just a prop, a way to confirm someone was home, maybe to scope the layout from inside. That's when it hit me. He wasn't delivering anything. He was testing me. I couldn't stop replaying everything in my head. How long had he been watching the house? Had he picked it from the photos I uploaded? I remembered how, in one of the shots, you could see a corner of my alarm keypad just barely peeking into frame. I'd thought nothing of it at the time. But now, I was paranoid. Every creak in the floor, every flicker outside the window set me on edge. I canceled all showings for the week. I pulled the listing offline completely. I even slept on the couch a few nights with the porch light on and my shoes by the door, just in case I had to run. That kind of fear changes how you move through your own home. I didn't feel safe there anymore, even though technically nothing had happened. But almost was enough. 3 days went by without anything unusual, but I was still on edge. I kept checking my cameras constantly, barely slept, and didn't leave the house unless it was broad daylight. On the 4th night, just as I started thinking maybe it was over, my phone pinged with a motion alert at 3:08 a.m. My heart jumped into my throat. I tapped the notification, and there it was again. The same van, same guy, parked across the street this time, just sitting there. No movement, no lights, just idling. He stayed there for maybe 5 minutes, then drove off slowly, turning the corner like he was trying not to wake the neighborhood. I reported it, of course, but without a license plate or crime in progress, the cops couldn't do much. One of them even hinted that it might have been a scare tactic, a way to rattle me. That was the last time I saw him. I don't know why he gave up. Maybe the extra police presence scared him off. Or maybe he figured the risk wasn't worth it. Either way, I wasn't willing to wait around for another surprise visit. I ended up moving in temporarily with my brother across town and hired a professional security company to check my place and install better surveillance. They found a small black screw-in camera wedged behind the porch light fixture. Something subtle, almost impossible to notice unless you were looking for it. That detail broke me. He'd been planning something, and I have no idea for how long. I never went back to that house alone again. A few weeks later, I sold it through a realtor. No photos online this time. Just private showings with background-checked buyers. And I didn't spend another night under that roof. The weirdest part is, I still don't really know what was going to happen. He didn't break in. He didn't steal anything. But I know in my gut that it was going somewhere much darker. Maybe I interrupted his timing, or maybe the police showing up ruined his plan. Either way, it felt like a warning shot, like I was being tested for something worse. That fear never fully left. If you're reading this and thinking about selling your house, be careful. I don't mean to scare anyone, but double-check the photos you upload. Crop out your alarm panels, your floor plans, anything that might give away more than you realize. Lock your windows, even the ones you think no one can reach. And if someone shows up with a delivery you didn't order, especially flowers, don't just assume it's a mistake. I used to think stuff like this only happened in big cities or on the news. But it happened to me in a quiet neighborhood on a random Tuesday. And I still don't have all the answers, but at least I'm still here to ask the questions. I'm not exactly the type to post stuff like this, but I haven't been able to shake what happened to me and my fiancée last winter. My name's Rachel. I was 27 at the time, and this happened just after the new year, January 4th to be exact. We'd booked a 3-day stay at a small rental cabin about 40 minutes outside of Brainerd, Minnesota. It was supposed to be a quiet getaway from work and wedding planning. Just me and Tyler, my fiancé. I work as a graphic designer from home, and Tyler's a middle school teacher. We're both used to noise and schedules, so the idea of a peaceful cabin in the snow, with no one around for miles, sounded like heaven. The cabin was listed as Rustic Pines on the rental site. It was cute. 1-story dark wood siding, a stone chimney, and floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out into a thick wall of forest. The road to get there was narrow and mostly gravel, winding up through trees that had turned into giant icicles. When we arrived, there was already about a foot of snow on the ground, and the forecast said a storm was coming that night. No big deal. We were stocked with food, wine, firewood, and the kind of books you only read when you're far away from cell service. The Wi-Fi was spotty, which was honestly part of the charm. We spent the first night playing cards and listening to the wind howl outside. The weirdness started the next morning around 11 a.m. The snow had picked up overnight, and it was now coming down in thick sheets. Tyler was making coffee while I was still wrapped in a blanket on the couch, scrolling through photos I'd taken of the forest. Then came the knock. It was loud, way too loud for a light wooden door, and it made me jump. Tyler looked at me, eyebrows raised like, "You expecting someone?" I shook my head, obviously not. No one was supposed to be out here. We hadn't even seen another vehicle since we turned off the highway. He went to the door and peeked through the curtain. Then he kind of froze. Standing on the small porch was a man in a brown insulated jacket, holding a clipboard and wearing one of those neon yellow beanies. Behind him, idling in the snow-covered driveway, was a white delivery truck, not a branded one, just plain white with some snow crusted along the sides. Tyler opened the door just a crack, and the guy smiled, but something about it felt tight, forced. He said something like, "Hey there, sorry to bother you folks, but I've got a drop-off for this address. Some perishable items. GPS probably messed up. Happens all the time out here." Hey. Tyler told him we hadn't ordered anything, but the guy insisted he had our location on the manifest. His voice had this weird cheeriness to it, like a customer service rep who's about to lose it. Tyler asked what name the order was under, and the guy looked at the clipboard, squinted, then mumbled something like Kensley or Kessler. It didn't even sound close to our names. Tyler told him again that we hadn't ordered anything, and the man just gave a shrug like, "Ah well, must be a mistake." But instead of heading back to his truck, he stayed there, just lingered. He stood on the porch for a moment too long, eyes drifting past Tyler and scanning the inside of the cabin behind him. Then, without another word, he turned and walked slowly back to the truck. We expected him to drive off. Instead, he climbed into the cab and just sat there, engine running, staring directly at the house. I tried to laugh it off at first, saying maybe he was checking directions or waiting for a call from his dispatcher. But after 10-15 minutes of him not moving, not even pretending to organize packages or turn around, the vibe shifted from strange to downright unsettling. He wasn't even pretending to look at a GPS anymore. He was looking straight at the front window. And I don't mean casually. I mean staring. Tyler pulled the curtain halfway shut and said, "Okay, this is getting weird." That's when I started feeling it too, that crawling sense that something was wrong, but you can't explain why. I kept trying to tell myself he was just some confused delivery guy, probably annoyed about being out in the middle of nowhere during a snowstorm. But then, why didn't he leave? We decided to call the rental owner just to be safe. The number was in the welcome folder on the kitchen counter. Tyler got through on the first try, and I could hear the voice on speaker. Her name was Diana, probably in her 60s, super friendly when we checked in. But as soon as Tyler explained what was going on, her tone changed. She asked us to describe the truck and the man. After we did, there was this long pause. Then she said, "That doesn't make sense. No one should be on that road today. The only access point was shut down early this morning by county plows. You shouldn't have any visitors. Especially not deliveries." I remember the way she said that, especially not deliveries. Like she knew something she wasn't telling us. I got this pit in my stomach, like the floor dropped out beneath me. I looked back toward the window. The truck was still there, unmoving, but now the driver's side door was cracked open. I could see the man's boot hanging out slightly, like he was preparing to get out again. Diana told us to lock the doors and stay inside. She said she was calling the sheriff's office, but the storm had knocked out the direct lines, and it might take a while to get a response. "Whatever you do," she said, "don't open the door again." And then the call cut out. Just like that. No warning. 1 second we were talking, the next, dead silence. I looked at Tyler, and for the first time he looked scared. At that point, we backed away from the front of the cabin and killed all the lights. The living room, which had felt so cozy the night before, suddenly felt way too exposed. Those big windows that had given us such a beautiful view of the woods now felt like a spotlight aimed directly at us. We crawled into the hallway by the bedroom and just sat there listening. The only sounds were the faint hum of the truck engine and the wind hammering against the siding. Every few minutes I'd peek through the curtain, just enough to see. The truck hadn't moved, but the driver's door was still open. And I swear, I saw him standing just outside of it, like he was trying to decide what to do next. About 20 minutes passed like that. Then we heard it, crunching snow. Footsteps. Not heavy like someone stomping, but deliberate. Slow. Like whoever it was didn't want to be heard, but couldn't help the sound of ice breaking under each step. Tyler grabbed the fire poker from beside the wood stove and stood by the door. I was in the bedroom, hiding behind the dresser, heart in my throat, phone clutched in both hands, refreshing the screen over and over, praying the bars would come back. Then a knock. Not on the front door this time. On the back. The side of the house that faced the woods. There were no lights back there, no porch, no reason for anyone to be near that door. We didn't move, didn't breathe. Another knock, slower this time. Then a voice, "Hey, I think I might have the wrong address after all. Mind if I come in to warm up a sec?" It was the same guy, same tone. But the weird thing is, it didn't sound like it was right outside the door. It sounded closer, almost like it was coming from the wall, or through the wall. I've never had that happen before, where my ears couldn't place where a sound was coming from, but it made my skin crawl. Tyler didn't respond. We just stayed frozen there for what felt like forever. Eventually, the voice stopped. No more knocking, no more footsteps. Just the sound of the wind again. It wasn't until almost an hour later that we realized the truck was gone. No engine, no lights, no tire tracks even. Just snow. Like it had never been there. The sheriff finally showed up late that night, after the worst of the storm had passed. He took our statement and stayed with us while we packed up. We drove back to town with him following close behind. He said there were no reports of any delivery trucks in the area, and the only road in had been blocked by a snowdrift since early morning. I don't know what that man wanted, or how he even got up there, but I've never felt fear like that before. And I'll never stay in a remote cabin during a storm again. Ever. I'm 32 now, but this happened just over a year ago in the spring. I live alone in a quiet, tree-lined neighborhood in the suburbs of Maryland. It's one of those places where people still wave when they pass your driveway. And the loudest thing at night is usually some raccoon tipping over a trash can. I'd been working from home for a couple of years, freelancing as a designer. so I kept a pretty predictable routine. Coffee by 8, emails by 9, walk around the block after lunch. Nothing ever really happened around here. That day had started just like any other, until it didn't. It was around 2:30 in the afternoon, and I just wrapped up a client call. I remember because I had muted the TV, which was playing some documentary in the background, and was just about to reheat some leftover pad thai when I heard the doorbell. It startled me a bit, not because it was loud, but because it was unexpected. I wasn't waiting on anything. I looked out the peephole and saw a man in a dark green jacket and a gray baseball cap holding what looked like a little handheld scanner. He had a clipboard tucked under his arm and wore a lanyard with some faded logo I didn't recognize. Looked like a delivery guy, but not from any company I knew. When I cracked the door open, he gave me a polite smile. Not too friendly, not weird either. He had that kind of face you forget as soon as you look away. Early 40s, clean-shaven, average height, a little hunched like he was used to carrying boxes all day. He told me there had been a mix-up with a package. Apparently one that was supposed to come to my address had been delivered next door by mistake, and he just needed my signature to confirm they'd handed it over properly. I remember glancing toward the house next door, which belonged to an older couple who were always out during the day. Their driveway was empty, like always. I hesitated for a second, but it didn't seem that strange. I stepped out, barefoot, and followed him just a few steps toward the sidewalk where he pointed. He was holding out the clipboard, and while I was signing, still trying to figure out what kind of company he worked for, I heard a bird flap loudly behind me and turned instinctively. Just a crow on the power line. I signed the form, or whatever it was, honestly I didn't even read it, and turned back to my front door maybe a minute later. That's when I felt it first. This weird shift in the air, like something was off. I didn't see anything unusual at first glance, but when I reached the front door and pushed it open, I felt a rush of cold air sweep past me. From the back of the house, I froze. The back door, the one that led to the patio, was wide open. At first I just stood there, staring at the open back door like maybe there was some logical explanation. I never leave it unlocked, let alone wide open. It has one of those heavy sliding locks that you actually have to tug pretty hard to open. I remember locking it that morning like I always do, right after my walk. I took a few cautious steps inside, calling out softly, "Hello?" which felt dumb the second it left my mouth. It's not like anyone would answer, but I needed to hear something. Anything. The house was dead silent, except for the low hum of the fridge in the kitchen and the faint ticking of the clock above the sink. I grabbed the closest thing to a weapon I could find, a heavy ceramic mug from the dish rack, and moved through the living room, checking every corner like I was in some low-budget horror movie. Closet doors, the hallway, the laundry room, all empty. But my heart was beating so loud I could barely hear myself think. I felt this overwhelming sense that I was just missing something. Like someone had been there, maybe even still was there, hiding just out of reach. I didn't want to go into the bedroom, but I forced myself. Threw the door open fast. Empty. The bathroom too. No signs of a struggle. Nothing taken. Just that open door, like a gaping mouth waiting for me to notice it. I ended up calling the non-emergency police line, mostly because I couldn't bring myself to dial 911 without sounding insane. They came about 20 minutes later. 2 officers, one older and calm, the other younger and a little skeptical. They checked the house again, asked if I noticed anything missing, any signs of forced entry. I told them about the man at the door, how he claimed to be a delivery guy, how he got me to step outside. The younger cop raised his eyebrows when I mentioned the clipboard. "Did he actually show you any ID?" he asked. I hadn't even thought of that. The guy had a lanyard, sure, but no badge, no logo I could remember. And that form I signed? He took it with him. I felt sick when they asked if I had any cameras, And I remembered I had a basic security cam above the back patio. I barely used it. It was more for peace of mind than anything, but it was hooked up to an app on my phone. I pulled it up, hands trembling, and fast-forwarded to the time I was outside. And there he was. The delivery guy, distracting me at the front. But then, about 15 seconds after I stepped outside, the footage showed something else. A second man. Tall, wearing a black hoodie, jeans, a white surgical mask. He appeared from the side yard, crouched low, and slipped through the back door like he'd done it 100 times before. No hesitation, no noise. Like a damn shadow. Watching that footage felt like my stomach had dropped straight through the floor. The way that second guy moved, it wasn't frantic or rushed. It was like he knew the layout of my place, like he knew exactly how long he had. He didn't look around nervously, didn't waste time. He stepped inside, vanished from the frame, and reappeared about a minute and a half later, slipping out the same way he came in, empty-handed. I kept rewinding and replaying that part, trying to catch some detail I missed. Maybe he dropped something, maybe he left something. But no, nothing. It was like he just scoped the place, then left. And I had been standing 20 feet away the whole time. The officers took the footage, filed a report, and said they'd keep an eye out for anyone matching the descriptions. But they also told me, gently, like they were trying not to freak me out, that sometimes these guys do dry runs before coming back later. Test how easy it is to get someone outside. See how long it takes for them to check the house. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. Every little creak in the walls sounded like footsteps. I left every light on. Even pushed my dresser in front of the back door like that would help. I kept going back to that weird clipboard, wondering what the hell I even signed. If it was real, or just some decoy to keep me distracted for exactly 2 minutes. The next few days were a blur of anxiety. I got a better lock installed, added cameras to the front, even bought one of those motion alarms that sends alerts to your phone. I told my neighbors, especially the older couple next door, and to my surprise, the woman said something that made my skin crawl. Apparently, around the same time the week before, she had a knock at the door too. A man claiming to be from a cable company, asking if she had noticed any signal issues in the area. She said he was friendly, maybe a bit too friendly, but she'd been on the phone with her son and didn't go outside. He left after a minute. She didn't think much of it, until I brought it up. The police never found the guys. Nothing ever turned up on the footage from other houses. No one else reported anything stolen or suspicious. It's like they just vanished. But something about how calculated it all was still keeps me up some nights. They didn't come to rob me, not that time at least. They came to see how easy it would be, how far I'd go before I noticed. And the worst part is, I helped them do it. I stepped right outside, gave them my blind spot, handed them the opportunity on a silver platter. I think about that every time someone knocks now. Every time a package shows up without warning. I don't answer the door anymore, not without checking every single camera. A couple of weeks later, I ended up buying a big dog from a local rescue. A German Shepherd mix named Daisy. Sweet with me, but with a bark like thunder anytime someone gets too close to the house. I also installed a reinforced steel bar on the back door. Upgraded all the windows with locks that can't be popped from the outside, and set the cameras to ping my phone the second someone steps on the porch. It sounds extreme, I know, but I don't think people realize how fast things can happen. How something that feels like a normal weekday afternoon can turn into the moment your sense of safety gets completely shattered. To this day, I don't know what their real plan was. Maybe it was just a test run for a burglary. Maybe they were hoping I'd leave my phone on the table and take longer outside. Or maybe it was something worse, something I don't even want to put into words. What I do know is that they picked me because I looked like an easy target. Quiet neighborhood, woman living alone, no dog, no alarm system. I checked every one of those boxes. But now I keep the doors locked even when I'm inside. Now I treat every knock like it could be something more. I shared this story because I genuinely think people don't take this kind of thing seriously until it happens to them. We assume danger is obvious, that it comes with a mask and a weapon and a loud noise. But sometimes it wears a baseball cap and holds a clipboard, smiling just enough to make you drop your guard. It's not about being paranoid. It's about being aware. If you ever feel something's off, trust that instinct. If I had waited even a second longer to come back inside, I don't know. Maybe this story would have a very different ending. Anyway, that's it. I'm okay now, but I'm not the same person I was before it happened. And honestly, I think that's a good thing. Stay safe out there, and don't ever step outside without looking over your shoulder. I'm not really the type of person who posts in forums like this, but what happened last month has been eating at me. My name's Derek. I'm 41, divorced, and live with my 12-year-old daughter, Ellie, in a modest two-bedroom house in a quiet cul-de-sac just outside Portland. I work remotely as a project coordinator for a software company, which basically means I'm glued to my laptop from 9 to 5. Ellie's usually at school during the day, and things around here are usually uneventful, boring even. That Wednesday started like any other. I was on my second cup of coffee, still wearing sweatpants, answering emails, when I heard a knock at the front door. Not the doorbell. A knock. Firm, deliberate, and too rhythmic to be random. I opened the door to find a man standing there in a neon orange vest, clipboard in hand. He had this weirdly clean look, like he had just changed into fresh clothes for the role. Khakis with no wrinkles, polished work boots that looked barely worn, and a laminated ID badge clipped to his vest, swinging slightly in the wind. His hair was jet black, neatly parted, and he had a calm, almost bored expression, like he was on his 100th house that day. He said he was doing routine delivery confirmation checks for the property management company. Claimed they were following up on recent package thefts in the neighborhood. It sounded kind of legit at first, until he asked how many people lived in the house. That question threw me off. I asked him why that mattered, and he gave a vague answer about cross-verifying delivery routes. Something about optimizing drop-off protocols. I didn't want to be rude, but something about him made my skin crawl. His eyes never quite matched his smile, and he kept glancing toward the side of the house like he was trying to memorize something. Still, I didn't want to assume anything, so I answered vaguely, "Just me and my kid." He made a note on his clipboard, not a check mark, a note. Then he asked if I had a back gate or any outdoor cameras. That's when the warning bells really started going off in my head. I told him I had cameras, which was a lie, and said I'd need to verify everything he was saying with the property manager. His demeanor shifted. Barely. But I noticed it. His jaw clenched for a split second, and he tucked his clipboard a little tighter under his arm. Then, like flipping a switch, he smiled again and said, "No problem at all. Have a good one," and started walking toward the street. But he didn't head straight to a car. He walked around the side of my property, pretending to jot something down, glancing up at the windows. I shut the door and locked it, then immediately called the property management office. And that's when the real anxiety kicked in, because the woman on the phone told me they hadn't sent anyone out. No inspections, no safety checks, no clipboard guy. I hung up the phone and just stood there in my living room, feeling this awful tightness in my chest. You know when your gut tells you something's wrong and your brain tries to rationalize it away? That was me, pacing around the house, checking the locks, peeking through blinds. The guy was gone by then, vanished down the street, no car in sight. I even stepped outside to look around, but it was like he'd just disappeared. I reported it to the non-emergency line, and they said they'd send someone out later to take a statement. Meanwhile, I couldn't focus on work. Every little noise, branches tapping the window, a squirrel on the roof, had me on edge. I didn't tell Ellie. I didn't want to scare her. But that night I pushed a chair under the front doorknob like it was some 90s movie and left a light on in the hallway. The officer didn't show up until that evening. He was polite but didn't seem all that concerned. Took my statement, asked a few questions, and said it was probably someone posing as a contractor to scout for package theft. Apparently that happens a lot. He said I did the right thing not giving too much info and to keep an eye out, but that didn't help me sleep any better. I kept replaying that man's face in my head. The way he scanned the side of the house, the way he didn't knock or ring the bell again, just vanished after I called the office. I ordered fake security cameras online that night, ones with blinking red lights, just to give the illusion we had surveillance. Looking back, it feels so stupid that I didn't call the actual police right away. 2 nights later, around 2:40 in the morning, I woke up to a sound I still can't fully describe. It wasn't loud, but it was deliberate. This slow sliding sound followed by a metallic clunk. At first I thought maybe it was Ellie going to the kitchen for water. But when I sat up, I realized it was coming from the back of the house, the sliding glass door in the dining room. My heart started racing before my feet even touched the floor. I crept out of bed, every floorboard sounding like thunder under my weight. The house was pitch dark except for the small nightlight in the hallway. As I rounded the corner, I saw the silhouette of someone crouched outside by the glass, fiddling with the lock. I froze. There was no mistaking it. Someone was trying to get in. They had something in their hand, I think a screwdriver or a crowbar. I backed up slowly, then